to people who challenge you and say that maybe it's not a news organization's role to be activists, to take an activist perspective or to encourage activism beyond the informing capacity?
Well, look, I think it's the reality we live in.
How's it going, everybody? So I'm back in New York City, and a couple days ago I did a video with Maddox where we talked about this Resist panel, and one of the first things I brought up was that this was at VidCon. This was an activism panel, and there were two news personalities on it. Now, the discussion we had was mostly about the rhetoric used by activists and Maddox's take on that, but I want to take this opportunity to elaborate on the bad things, I guess, in news media. You know what? I do this all the time. I criticize the media a lot. And it's kind of like, ever since I stopped working for these big companies, there's just so much to vent. So, at VidCon, there was a panel called Resist. And it had basically everyone on there was a media personality. It's VidCon. These are all people who make YouTube videos in some way. And look, there's Cenk from the Young Turks. And that is one of the biggest news platforms on YouTube, but I cut them some slack. You know, Cenk, he's doing a thing called Wolfpack, which is trying to get money out of politics, and he's also doing something called Justice Democrats, which is basically supporting Bernie Sanders-style progressives. While I don't agree with the politics, I'm at least appreciative of the fact that he flat out says this is his perspective, this is what he does. So, look, if you're going to watch the Young Turks, you see him commenting on this news, you know exactly where he's coming from. It's not news, right? Technically everything's news, but this is social commentary. The Young Turks don't do as much on the ground sourcing. It's a lot of in-studio social commentary that goes for Cenk as well as, Ana Kasparian. But there's another guy there, and his name was, I believe I'm pronouncing this right, Ethan Stephanopoulos, and he was the president of Now This News. If you don't know, Now This News makes social media videos. They recently got into a huge controversy when they took over two YouTube channels. One of them was Seeker Daily, and there was a huge backlash because you can't just take someone's YouTube channel and then rebrand it an entirely different company, fire all the staff, hire new staff, and think that the people who subscribe to that channel are going to be happy. Well, they weren't, and the channel Now This, which used to be Seeker, hasn't posted anything in just about 2 months. While frustrating and stupid to see these businesses do whatever it is they're trying to do, the real problem arises when you hear what this guy, Ethan, said on a panel. First of all, like I said, they're news companies. This is the president of a news media company. They do other stuff. On a panel called Resist, talking about activism. He's flat out asked how they incorporate activism into the company, into their content, and you can listen for yourself.
First, we've actually partnered with a new organization recently called Opposition. And it's a group of young activists who are actively trying to stand up against the Trump administration, against corporate greed. So I would encourage you to all go check out at Opposition. One thing that I've done today, I like to believe that in the company that we're running, and although I'm not in front of the camera like everybody else here, I represent a company and a group that puts a lot of young people in front of the camera every day to talk about these issues. It's really empowering that group of people to stand up every day to talk about the various issues that matter to them. And it's a daily action.
Yeah, that's great.
Basically, there's been this excuse that it's the nature of today that we have to eschew objective or unbiased reporting for activism. This is the president of a company who's flat out asked how he incorporates activism into the news. And he's up on a panel in front of all these people just flat out saying they're activists. Basically, He's proud, okay? He's allowed to be proud. But he's talking about how they've teamed up with activists for a specific political cause. Information with the intent to present a political cause, either misleading or one-sided, is called propaganda. I'm not making that up, that's the actual definition. This guy up on stage flat out said, we're a news media company with a political ideology that we're pushing. That means you make propaganda. And you know, that word has a very, very harsh negative connotation. And I don't mean this necessarily in a derogatory manner. I mean literally by definition, now this is propaganda. They're anti-Trump progressives making viral content. So here's the big problem, I guess. We're hearing a lot about the regressive left, and it feels like politically we're getting more and more extreme. These people, these companies, they're activists, right? There was another panel with Lauren Duca on it. These people aren't journalists. They don't go out into the field and source information. They comment on news. They're not the people who are contacting sources. They're not the people who are going out into the field and risking their necks. Lauren Duca's entire Twitter feed is just anti-Trump sentiment, right? So that's activism. The scales have tipped. When I first started doing this, a lot of people said that I was an activist, and initially I was kind of like, yeah, sure, whatever, because I didn't really know what I was doing. I come from the world of information activism. There's a lot of hackers who are exfiltrating data from, corporations and things like that. There's, Anonymous when they hacked HB Gary Federal and they're leaking information. When Occupy Wall Street started, when the Arab Spring started, I was hanging out with a bunch of hackers, and we have a belief that information should be free. Now, it's not absolute. We don't, not everybody thinks that every single bit of data should be open to the public, but that data for the public interest, produced with the resources from the public or in public, should be widely available. Some people go a lot further than that, believing that, all government data should be free as well. For me, it was information activism. I was going out, I was producing content, and it wasn't for a political goal other than to make sure people were informed. Well, I was told shortly after that was called journalism, and I said, yeah, you call it whatever you want, sure. I don't think I follow the traditional rules, traditional ethics. My goal is just to figure out what's going on, why it's going on, and be honest with people about what we're seeing. But when you have a big news company, when you've got a big YouTube platform, when you've got this company now this funded in the tens of millions, and they have an agenda, anti-Trump progressive activism. Well, then how can you really trust them, especially when it's only in certain settings that they come out and say that they're activists? You'll see a viral YouTube video, you'll see a viral Facebook clip, and you don't know anything about this company, and this clip presents a slant. Take, for instance, there was an incident where Mike.com selectively edited a video from a Trump rally to make it look like some young woman was the victim of a brutal attack, when in reality she actually punched some old guy. Back when I started doing news and video and live stream, people were calling me an activist, like I was just saying. But there was this big sort of uprising of activist media that everyone was really interested in. And outside of what I was doing, there were actual progressives who were producing what they flat out called propaganda. I never called what I did propaganda, and I actually got physically attacked for it. But this many years ago, there was a small group of activists producing media, and then there was the news media. But now it's flipped. Now it's mostly digital activists, and the news is dying. Newsrooms across the country are falling apart. We're seeing ratings collapse for the cable news networks, and more digital media companies are choosing a political slant to try and court viewers. What's going to end up happening? People are going to get pushed further and further into the left and right extremes. And then they're going to fight each other in the streets, and that's what's happening. There needs to be some kind of reinvigoration, I suppose, of people who are less interested in a political agenda and more interested in honesty. People often say to me, Tim, you're so unbiased, you're so objective, and I don't think that's true. I'm just not in it for the politics, right? There are some things that I definitely have an opinion on. Free speech, for example, okay? But when it comes to how the economy should work, who should be the president, how should we make the country better, I have no idea. So I'm not interested in who's right and who's wrong. In my opinion, it's bad Because what ends up happening is there are people who don't have the time to research all of these things. They don't have the time to look for counterpoints. Not everyone can be a journalist. And so they see a video, it's presented in a very one-sided manner, it's presented with a perspective, and then they'll just believe it to be true. I guess it's how it's always been, really. But with digital media, it's so much easier to just find news that makes us feel good, that plays to our confirmation bias. The only thing that we can really do is just be aware of it. I'm gonna keep doing what I do, and I'm gonna make sure that you all know that when you see a video from Now This, you know they're activists. And if you like their content, by all means, you are free to like it. If you agree with their opinions, by all means, you are free to agree with their opinions. But just keep in mind, they have a political agenda. But how do you think? How do you feel about it? Click the like button if you like the video. I guess apparently likes and comments don't even matter anymore. I don't even know what's going on. YouTube's so weird. But I appreciate everybody who's watching my channel. And it's a nice day out, so at least that's relaxing. The G20 is coming up. So I'll be in Hamburg, Germany for that, maybe. We're trying to figure out what's going on with that, but there's also the Day of Rage on July 2nd, and a bunch of people are talking now about where we're going to head out and what cities to cover. So send any suggestions my way. You can tweet at me. I'm on Twitter at Timcast. If you want to help me do the work that I do, make sure you go to patreon.com/Timcast. Give whatever you can or give nothing at all. My videos will always be available every day, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I'll see y'all later.